If you watched our first portion of this video, we basically wanted to figure out what was going on with Catherine with regards to fatigue, sleep issues. We obviously have a good idea that some of her neck pain might be causing some of the sleep issues, but we really want to figure out, are there hormonal problems? Are there issues with cortisol levels throughout the day with her adrenal glands? And one topic that always comes up a lot now is adrenal fatigue, hormonal problems, especially with women, thyroid problems. So a test that I chose to run is a Dutch analysis. It's a dried urine analysis of her hormones. We're gonna be looking at the adrenal glands and an all-encompassing picture of how good she is producing cortisol. Is it at the right times of the day? Is it the right amounts for certain times of the day? Seeing her melatonin levels and looking at her B12 levels, her glutathione levels for detoxing, and then looking at overall what do her hormones look like. The best thing probably about this test is that you can see every single hormone metabolite. When you go to your doctor and you just get a serum estrogen test, it doesn't give you the whole picture. You'll get an estradiol, and that's actually one of 3 different estrogens, and you can maybe even say 6 different estrogens because you have metabolites. And the problem we see typically when we have women come in here is, yes, maybe their estrogen looks okay, but the other types of estrogen like E1, E3, 16-hydroxy, 4-hydroxy, 2-hydroxy are either high or low, and those can cause the problems even if the estradiol is normal. So we want to get a good look at everything, especially because she says she has this fatigue, the sleep issues, and even just with menstruation that can be off. You have periods that sometimes start right on time, sometimes they're 2 weeks late. You have to have a correct cycle that's normal in order to feel good as a woman. So that's something that we'll see in here as well. So when we looked at her lab test, we got it back. It's a great test. As you're seeing on the screen, you can maybe barely see, but we'll have a good summary of everything. They're going to start to test her hormones. And as we got her hormone panel back, this is urine, so it's showing what she's used, not what's in the blood. That's going to be something like what type of estrogen you have right now. It is how much are you making and utilizing. So with her, we got this back. The first thing we noticed in here is her androgens, or her testosterone, were actually a little bit high. And she was more androgenic than she should be for a female. Now, that doesn't mean that she's going to have a deep voice and have muscles or anything like that. Basically, what this means, and even I described to her because of the career she has, you'll see this a lot of times with women where they'll maybe a little bit more, not necessarily angry than usual, but have more mood fluctuations, where they'll have acne and sometimes thinning hair. You attribute that sometimes to thyroid and maybe mineral deficiencies, but a lot of times it's from your testosterone, and hers is certainly higher than it should be. So we can use certain things to get that down. We're not going to use anything just yet, but we can use diet to start to help this out. Maybe some more fats in the diet, get some anti-inflammatory type of foods in the diet. But once that goes high, now we need to see what the rest of her hormones look like, because everything is in a cycle. So if the testosterone's high, if the androgens are high, we have to look at her estrogens. And sure enough, we missed her cycle here. So that tells us right off the bat, she would assume that her cycle was going to start. We want to shoot for 19 and 22 days. Everything was low. So there we have confirmed that she is just not cycling correctly. For females, especially that want to get pregnant or having a hard time getting pregnant, you can figure out where your actual window is using this test. So with her, progesterone levels were low, her estrogen was low, so we knew we missed her cycle, but we can see her metabolites as we scroll down through here, and you can tell now that she is not detoxing estrogens out of her body as well as she should be. So even though her her estrogens through here looked fine, they're all at the same level, down here her metabolites weren't. And you have one metabolite here, 4-hydroxy, was actually too high. So a lot of times with women, what you'll see is if these are high and they're not getting out of your body, your liver has to do that and your gut. You actually excrete it out when you have a bowel movement. If that's higher, that means excess estrogen. So you'll have weight around the midsection, weight in the hips and the butt, excess weight that you just can't get rid of. And that's a big time thing to find out with this lab test, if that is something that you experience. So we want to get rid of that, but it also, that aside, tells us she's not detoxing well. So this could, even though it's estrogen, it can also be toxins that she encounters. It could be, chemicals that she encounters, pesticides, waste products she's just not getting rid of. And so we have to look downstream, and sure enough, it just doesn't look like she's methylating well, and that means utilizing B12. So what we can do is now confirm that. We look down at the end of her test, and we look at B12, high end of range, B6 above range. So she's deficient in both of those vitamins. So that's the first thing we're going to start her out on. is a sublingual dropper of high therapeutic dose B12, so that it goes straight underneath the tongue, right in the system, so that it can go where it needs to be. That can start to help her metabolize some of her estrogens. Before we go any further, this is not an end-all be-all for people to get rid of estrogen. You have to know what pathway is slow. This is the one. It could be other ones in other people, so this is specific to her. B12 will help this process, but you need to know the right B12. So for her, it's going to be a methyl B12, and it could be other ones for other people, but that's what you have to look at. We go back up, look at her cortisol now. So cortisol has to be high in the morning, helps wake you up, get your energy up, and you have the rest of the day as the cortisol goes down to sustain your energy. And for her, it was kind of like, I'm not sleeping well, I don't have energy in the morning. The rest of the day, I'm okay, kind of fatigued sometimes, kind of not. So what we wanted to key in on is what was her cortisol looking like in the beginning of the day? You know, what were we doing in the beginning of the day? The beginning of the day, right when you wake up, your cortisol should be high and it should jump right when you wake up in the morning. So on her test here, we see that it's very, very low. So for anybody that looks like this in their lab test, no matter how long you sleep, which was even her, she would sleep 8-10 hours and still wake up and feel groggy. Like, I wake up and I just don't feel excited to do anything. I don't feel good. And as the day goes on, then I start to feel better. So what we're doing with her lifestyle change wise is when she wakes up in the morning, she's going to get active, have her do some body weight squats, some jumping jacks, and then go look right in a mirror to get sunlight in her eyes. When your body starts doing that in the morning, or when you get the sunlight in your eyes, your body produces cortisol. It's a natural reaction. So cortisol is what's called a diurnal hormone, meaning that it has to be almost in a cycle with sleeping and waking in the sun. So that's something that's an issue. Nurses, those types of people, they have problems with this always because of that. They do night shifts and those types of things. So we're gonna have her cortisol bump up like that. And we're also gonna use a supplement called, well, not really a supplement, but it's something called phosphatidylserine. Phosphatidylserine is something that helps your body produce cortisol. So when your body recognizes that it is in the system, you produce more cortisol. We're gonna have her take this in the afternoon at night, so that as she sleeps, she will produce more cortisol. That will also keep her asleep. If you have low cortisol in the morning and at night, you typically wake up periodically, and sometimes you'll wake up in the middle of the night and be like, well, gosh, I could just stay up the rest of the day. I could stay up the rest of the morning, I'm energized. So what's occurring is she has so low of cortisol in the middle of the night that she now produces adrenaline. And so adrenaline wakes you up and you're wired. It's like you have adrenaline flowing through your body. So we've got to get her cortisol back. That's the next thing. Last but not least with her, we've got to get her cycle regular, and we're coming back up and looking at the estrogens here, which comes back to progesterone. You want to make sure progesterone is peaking where it should be. That keeps your cycle regular. So we're going to use a supplement called Progestade. One specific ingredient in here, and I always mispronounce it, but it's chaste tree berry. That helps you make your cycles regular. If you take that, it will get your cycles to go on cue where they should be, barring any other major health issues. So we're going to start that so that she can start to cycle regular. That means her progesterone will go up, her estrogen should normalize, she should feel better, she should feel good, more energy, sleep better, weight, anything else that she may have a problem with will be normalized because the estrogen is finally getting to where it needs to be. One thing I'll note, because it's always interesting to look at, and the last thing is the last portion of this test looks at your vitamins, which we've already talked about, her B12, but also her neurotransmitters. So we can see here her norepinephrine and epinephrine are at the high end of range. Norepinephrine and epinephrine are released from the adrenals, and when they're high in people, you're typically anxious, stressed, moody, irritable, those types of things, okay? And that's something that most people sometimes just think, well, that's just me, I'm just always anxious. Not necessarily. It could be your neurotransmitters, could be a pathway not working. So with her, we have already started on a supplement, Cortisol Calm, that actually has theanine in there that will help that go down to help mellow her out a little bit. So during the day, she's not as stressed, she's not as anxious. If certain life events usually make her anxious, it'll start to get her to calm down a little bit. So neurotransmitters play a huge role, and I always tell people it's not just you, it's just a problem with your hormones, your metabolites, your neurotransmitters. So we can look at this, and we also see dopamine levels on here that we measure for to see if those are high or low, where you'll be moody, you'll crave certain foods, you'll be really major fluctuations in mood would be the biggest thing with this. So if those are low, we can certainly do things to get that normalized. But For her, the biggest thing is the sleep is a problem because of the cortisol. There's nothing else to do with it other than the cortisol. So we're gonna get that boosted up, get her hormones metabolized so she can start to feel better, she can detox properly. And like I said with her before, her specific career is all about skin and hair and looking healthy. And if you don't have detox pathways that work, those areas of the body are not going to look as great no matter what you use. So, some people I know for a fact buy all these products and it just doesn't work for them because there's something underlying. So if that's you, make sure you get this checked out so you can get these things working so that if you do buy some of these products, they can actually work for you. So that's pretty much what we look at on the dried urine test. Is one of the most accurate, if not the most accurate look at your hormones, how you're detoxing, how you're sleeping, how your energy is throughout the day. If you've ever heard of adrenal fatigue, this is what tests for it. It's a great test, and we're gonna start her on these three. We've already got her diet squared away, what it needs to be for the next few weeks, and we'll see where we can get.